My name is Marcus West, and this is my criticism presentation. My introduction, I did my criticism paper on Fauda, which translates to Arabic. To chaos, actually, in Arabic. And it's an action drama whose storytelling takes place somewhere in the West Bank, Israel, right there bordering Palestine. It was written by two individuals who provide a rather enlightening perspective of the conflict surrounding the ongoing dispute between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Avi Issacharov is one of the writers. He's actually an Israeli journalist noted for covering the Palestinian affairs, while the other creator, Lior Raz, is an ex-counterterrorism operations expert for the Israeli military. So I was kind of looking through some of the news journals, and according to Ittehad of the Wrap, Fauda is being held as groundbreaking because it does what most journalists fail to do. It tells both sides of the same story. Netflix actually acquired the show in 2016, and it's since been a groundswell of followers in the international community. The show is somewhat revolutionary in that it has a mass following from both Israelis and Palestinians, which is kind of unheard of. It's definitely groundbreaking. The creators were not quite sure how the show would be received by critics. Outside Israel, critics were equally dazzled. In The New Yorker, David Remnick penned a glowing review, writing, "Fauda aims to provide a complex portrait of both the unit and life in the occupied territories." Mike Hale of the New York Times wrote that Fauda is also a family drama in a way that American thrillers can't really duplicate. The opposing sides live in such close quarters and with so much shared history that wives, children, cousins, and girlfriends get caught up in the danger in believable ways without the manufactured plot twist that Americans typically employ in their family dramas. So just kind of getting the idea and concept sold was a task in itself. So the writers were just trying to talk about how difficult it was to actually get this sold to networks. And Roz and Isanoff, they pitched the story, the series, three of them, and I think there's like 10 networks actually in Israel, and for the most part, I think 9 of them actually turned them down. It was a very tough sell, says Isaroff. Said yes, but there was a condition. They had to actually produce 6 episodes of the show before I think one of the networks would actually even give it a shot. They had to see 6 episodes, so that was rather costly. Fauda is actually produced in both Arabic and Hebrew, with most of the dialogue within the show being spoken in actual Arabic. And for us, we'll see the subtitles. This is somewhat of an anomaly, as Arabic is rarely spoken in Israel, with the native language being Hebrew. From the beginning, the goal of the series was to fully explore a complicated story without bias or prejudice. That's exactly what audiences were actually able to see with this particular show. It makes people very uncomfortable, says Issaroff. We force people to sit and have a look at what's going on. We're not Palestinians, he says, and we cannot draw the Palestinian narrative, but we did try to bring it to the forefront. So my thesis for Fauda depicts the two-sided story of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The actual star of the show, Doron, who is actually one of the writers and the ex-special ops military individual. He's a commander of an undercover Israeli unit, the Israeli Special Forces, operating inside Palestinian territories. And his team is hunting down Hamas terrorist Abu Ahmed. On the other side of the fence in Palestine, the life of Abu Ahmed and his family, who was thus far murdered 143 Israelis, will never accept the state of Israel and will continue jihad for as long as it takes. They're committed to it. The genres of this show are international TV, TV action and adventure, and TV drama. It incorporates many genres in suspense in a suspenseful, dynamic way. It just incorporates, it goes in and out. Most of the characters are between the ages of 35 and 45, with a mix of married and single. It offers very little, if any, comedy, but a multitude of gripping action and romance. There's a beginning to be more and more crossover between the two factions as the romances brew between the two opposing sides. So as these guys are attempting to infiltrate the other side, the human element starts to kick in, and then there are romances, and things start to get twisted. The purpose of this analysis is to examine the entire 2-year season of Fauda for its structure, its substance, its story, and its characters. Fauda is a Netflix critically acclaimed series that was originally purchased in 2016. It revolves around a top Israeli agent who comes out of retirement to hunt for a Palestinian fighter he thought he'd kill, setting a chaotic chain of events into motion. The main characters of the Fauda are Lior Raz, Shadi Maro, Latita Ido, and they star as Doron, Waleed, and Dr. Shirin, respectively. Doron he's a main character of the show. He has a wife and a daughter, and after leaving the army, he actually retires, lives on a farm, grows grapes in order to make wine. So that's kind of his retirement job. He was actually previously credited with killing Abu Ahmed, and decides to rejoin his old Israeli Defense Force, Unit 261, after intelligence discovered that Abu Ahmed was actually alive. So this was very, very important to him, very emotional situation. And another of the main characters is Tawfiq. He's Abu Ahmad, and he's nicknamed the Panther in the show. So that's like the antagonist name for him in the show. He's married to Nasrin and has a son, Ahmad, and a daughter. Tawfiq had been trained by Ali Karmi since he was a kid and considers him a father. He's kind of like the old man, wise man figure for him. Ali turned him and gave information to Israel, actually, in exchange for surgery for his daughter. So he was the first person to actually be compromised by the Israeli special forces. Tawfiq, he's a high-level Hamas terrorist. He's assumed killed by the IDF, by Doron, actually, 18 months prior, only to find he's still alive and arranging terror attacks, despite having a funeral. Another main characters is Waleed al-Abed. Waleed is a trusted member in Tawfiq's team, actually, and one of the few who knows the truth about him being alive after his actual funeral. So they actually had a funeral, his wife was there, kids there, they didn't know anything. And but he actually, in order to, get something like that across or sold to a large masses, you have to have some people on your team. And Waleed was one of the main guys. He actually wound up killing Tawfiq, shooting him in the head from behind, because he found out that Tawfiq had actually been compromised and had given information to the Israeli Special Forces. Waleed, he's very dedicated, very, very dedicated. He puts Hamas cause above everything, including family. And he eventually shows this by kidnapping his aunt and cousin to further his case. Although always wanting to follow through on what Tawfiq actually told him when it comes to family, he wouldn't hurt them. So, he definitely had some compassion. When ordered to find Shirin and bring her back to Tawfiq, Waleed questions her, but ultimately reports back that he is unable to find her. So he's dedicated to the cause, but not willing to kill family members. Dr. Shirin, she's 32 years old, and she's actually the cousin of Waleed. Her mother is from Nablus. Her father's from Paris. She actually volunteered with Doctors Without Borders in 2006. She studied medicine at the Anaja National University and works in the emergency room of Rafidia Surgery Hospital, which is where she meets Doron. She is a widow who was originally married at 23 to a chemist, Naji, who died 4 years later from multiple sclerosis. She spent more of her life in Paris than actually in Israel, and left Paris after Naji died to be closer to her mother. So that's kind of why she moved back to Palestine. The basis of the show revolves around each faction sneaking to the other's country or compromising individuals in order to extract information that will lead to the demise of the other. It's just this ongoing battle. Fauda is a serialized series, meaning that each episode is predicated on prior episodes. There is a season finale, but it ultimately serves a method by which one antagonist is extinguished and a new antagonist is actually introduced. Also, when I analyzed Fauda, I looked at her mnemonic code, and the enigma actually in the show is, the Israelis trying to kill, whatever leader there is of the Hamas or the Jihad. So that is the enigma. How do we get in? How do we extinguish this particular individual? The delay is there's always some going back and forth. Sometimes they get particular information, then that information either it's not quite valid or they arrive 30 seconds too late, where they're able to triangulate where this particular terrorist is, and then they arrive at that particular location and he just left 20 seconds earlier. So that's always delay. And the resolution is actually when they are able to kill this particular antagonist or really get him cornered or actually get him to switch to the other side. So a lot of that takes place, which is why I said, like in the season finale, a lot of times one antagonist is extinguished only to find that there's a even bigger antagonist right behind him. So that's my critical presentation on Fauda.